This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the U.S. Soccer Podcast. I'm David Goss, your host, and what a perfect day to launch this show. We sit exactly 365 days away from the kickoff of the 2026 World Cup. It'll be the second ever Men's World Cup to be hosted here in the United States, and it is going to be the largest sporting event of all time. Now, normally, you would hear me alongside my co-hosts Megan Klingenberg and Alejandro Bedoya, taking you behind the scenes to connect with the characters who make U.S. soccer go both on and off the field. But in light of this major milestone looking towards the 2026 World Cup, we decided to do something a little bit special today. We are going to talk with 4 U.S. men's national team World Cup veterans. Some of them played in the previously hosted Men's World Cup here in the U.S. in 1994. Some were fans at the time, and all of them contributed to the biggest moments in USMNT history. We are going to talk with 1994 World Cup veteran and one of the biggest names in U.S. soccer, Cobi Jones.
And I realized that the police had stopped the entirety of the freeway in rush hour traffic on the 5, so that we could get on and have a smooth sailing, to the training site. That's when I was like, being a Cali kid, I was just like, okay, yep, this is it. It's here.
We are going to talk with his teammate and one of the faces of the game, Tony Meola.
I mean, we'd seen things. I remember there was a guy in Nebraska that stayed on his roof until we got knocked out of the World Cup. Like all these little things. We'd seen him on the news.
We will also be talking to 2010 World Cup veteran, a player who played in Germany and England, and of course here in the United States, Benny Feilhaber.
I mean, winning that game was, to me, it's still the biggest win in U.S. men's soccer history in modern era.
And normally my co-host, but today a guest, 2014 World Cup veteran, the face of the Philadelphia Union, Alejandro Bedoya.
Man, the streets just being flooded with music and the dancing and the passion that fans from all over the world descended upon Sao Paulo showed was incredible. It was tough to get some sleep sometimes at night just because, the party seemed like it never ended.
Well, we are going to dig in with all of these players about the 1994 World Cup. What it was like leading up to it, what it was like playing in it, what it was like watching it, experiencing it, its legacy, how it's affected their careers, the game in this country and everywhere around the world, and some of the big moments the USMNT has experienced since then that all of these players were a part of. So let's get started. We dig in exactly 32 years ago, preparing for the 1994 World Cup with Cobi Jones.
Oh, there's a ton of buildup. I mean, because for my part, I was part of the crew that was in Mission Viejo for a year and a half to 2 years, prepping, and training beforehand. And mind you, it wasn't just okay. Yeah, we practice a little bit here and there. We were doing pretty much double days for the entirety of that time. And you could talk to all the players that was unheard of. Doing double days for basically a year and a half plus. And man, it was hard not to think of it when you're just immersed in it. And that's all you're doing. I mean, when you're doing that extent of football, and mind you, it wasn't just double day sessions, it's the meetings that we would have, it's the traveling that we'd have. So you're in a family unit together, and that family unit is together just based off the fact of World Cup is coming to the USA.
So we went on this tour. Remember, we were at a different time, and then we went around the country, and we were playing games on the weekly and promoting the game. So we were kind of right in the middle of seeing the World Cup being promoted and people understanding it in real time. Like, this wasn't like you put an ad on a billboard and hope that people drive by and see it. Like, we were living it by the day. And then you kind of saw it start growing and growing and growing, leading all the way up to that Mexico game that we played at the Rose Bowl. I think it's 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before the World Cup when we beat them 1-0, and that place was packed. And that was like one of the only times we've played Mexico in the U.S. where it was probably split 50-50. And you could see the excitement was building.
Especially when you get into the training sessions and you get into your various hubs, you have your base, And for us being down in Mission Viejo, that moment for me was, if anybody knows LA, it was on the 5 freeway. It's packed all the time. Every morning going to training, it's packed. You're sitting in traffic, bumper to bumper. It was like a good 30 to 40-minute drive, and I lived like 5 exits away, from the training ground. I remember when we were at the hub at the hotel, and we got on the bus for the first training session, and we're going up. We have a police escort, because it's World Cup, and we're getting up and we're going up to get on the freeway. And I remember getting on the overpass as we're going to the other side to get on, and I look, and there's no cars. I was just like, what the? And I realized that the police had stopped the entirety of the freeway in rush hour traffic on the 5, so that we could get on and have a smooth sailing, to the training site. That's when I was like, being a Cali kid, I was just like, okay, yep, this is it. It's here.
We didn't have social media, so we didn't have like instantaneous. We'd have to hear stories or see it. Someone would have to tell us about it. We knew, but when you're playing, it's completely different. Like, you're just focused on the next game, and trying to do something the next game and preparing and getting your body right. Like, you really don't have the players outside of the obvious chance to play in a World Cup, which most people don't get that chance. They probably enjoy it the least out of anyone. Like, they don't get to be part of the party, They're trying to make their own party by winning games and doing something special for your country. Like that, I think people understand where I'm going with that. Is they don't get, like, to celebrate until 2 in the morning when your team wins and be out with all your friends. Like, that doesn't exist, You're just focused on games.
I think there was a sense of expectation, but there was also that nervousness about it because no one really knew what it was going to be like having a World Cup here in the United States. I think in a general sense, it was nervy. It was nervy. And then for the players and us as players, we had the pressure of, playing in a World Cup, trying to make the team, but also whoever was going to make an understanding that we didn't want to be the first host nation that didn't get out of the first round.
I actually remember a lot of the 94 World Cup. So I moved to the U.S. from Brazil, right? I'm born in Brazil, moved to the U.S. in 91, and the World Cup's 3 years later in 94. And so, I rember all the U.S. games. I remember the Winalda goal against Switzerland. Obviously, the infamous Colombia game with the own goals.
Both my parents immigrated here from Colombia. So at that time, 94 World Cup, I was rooting for Colombia. And my grandfather lived with us in our house. And that 94 World Cup, I didn't go to any games. Have some memories actually tailgating at the Meadowlands at Giant Stadium for a game. At that time, I was rocking that Valderrama wig on my hair. So I had that on, and, he was a very iconic player, amazing player for the World Cup games, just the amount of people and the craziness that ensued, right? And the passion that, Colombians showed for the game of soccer. And that really had a lasting impact on me. And from early on, it's just knew what I wanted to do.
When we got drawn in the World Cup with Colombia, it was like, this is our moment. Like, this is the chance that we can sting them a little bit. And just hearing that stadium, you could feel it just bouncing, and it was amazing.
You really can't put it into words because you feel it as you're driving into, if we're talking about the Rose Bowl, as you actually go into the bowl. If people don't know, the Rose Bowl actually sits in a bowl, like a bowl of the mountains all around it. And you come down into it, and just the crowds are already there. And the thing that stood out for me is the amount of American flags that you would see everywhere. They're supporting us as we were driving in, and that's when you're just like, you get that sense of pride. Your heart swells a little bit, and then you're pulling into the stadium, and you toss your stuff down and you go out to walk out to the field, and just the fact that you're walking out to the field and the stadium is packed already. It is, and it's a ton of American fans there. It's difficult to explain, but it's something that just gave me joy at the time, where I was just like, this is what all that work was for, the year and a half, and not only the year and a half, but just like everything that I did before in this game, it culminated in that moment.
As soon as the whistle blew against Colombia, the final whistle, that was wow. Like, holy shit, we just did this. Like, can you believe a team that Pelé at the beginning of the tournament picked Colombia to win the World Cup? Now, we know that they had some issues and all of that stuff. Like, I get all that, but in the moment, like, you're just – remember, we had played – I'm going to guess we played Colombia a half dozen times in the 2 years leading up. I could be off by a game or two, but I'm not that far off, and we had never beaten them. But I think we felt comfortable that there were moments in those games before that were like, okay, we can compete, and like, oh, some things have to go our way and something has to go right, and we have to be really, really sharp, and we have a chance. There's been like really cool moments in different stadiums in the world, but that moment for me is the one I remember.
And I remember the loss to Brazil, the 1-0. I think it was Bebeto that scored the goal that beat the U.S. And I remember thinking it was going to be, pretty easy. My mindset at that point was, Brazil's the best team in the world, and the U.S., isn't.
I mean, you're a kid in the U.S. at that time. All you hear about with soccer, Brazil, 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 Brazil. And as you said, to actually, walk out at Stanford Stadium, and I got the opportunity to play there and against Romario, Bebeto. I can still picture the moment as we're walking out before the game and seeing walk out next to the Brazilian team and them all holding hands, which I thought was cool at the time and different, as they walked out onto the field. It was, I mean, that will stick with me forever.
I mean, Brazil struggled to win that game. They were the clearly better team, but you know how sports can be, and I remember it being tight and kind of Brazil feeling relieved, I think, when Bebeto, finally scored that goal to eventually win 1-0. And so I remember that aspect of it from the American side of things. And I was actually in Brazil. We flew back during that time period. I think it was for summer break to visit family in Brazil. So I was actually in Brazil during the final. And I remember seeing there's nobody on the streets, right? I mean, Brazil in the final against Italy, there's literally no cabs anywhere. Think about like New York City where there's no cars outside. That's what it looked like to me. And yeah, obviously watching the final, at the Rose Bowl, and yeah, obviously the Baggio infamous miss. So it was fascinating to watch, and having it be in America. I think it's only, as a kid, retroactively do you really realize like what that symbolized, I think, for soccer in America once, MLS came to be.
This Pride Month, the U.S. Soccer Federation is proud to support You Can Play, a group dedicated to making sports a safe and welcoming space for everyone, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. When you shop our Pride collection at store.ussoccer.com, a portion of the proceeds goes directly to You Can Play to support their mission. Shop now and show your pride. Well, the 1994 World Cup had a massive legacy for the game here in the United States, but also for the sport around the world. Let's go to Alejandro Bedoya for more on that.
The 94 World Cup was the first time that the World Cup was held outside of, the typical Latin American or European countries, right? And that set the tone now for soccer to, grow, evolve, not just in our country, in the States and North America, but obviously in Africa and other parts of the world as well. And the World Cup was eventually held in South Korea, Japan as well.
Everyone has to realize that at that time, FIFA, was getting a lot of heat, about giving a World Cup to the United States. It's like, they don't know about soccer. They don't know what they're doing. But FIFA took a chance. And, as we can tell in the end, it was the right decision.
In 1994, when the World Cup kicked off, there was no professional First Division soccer league in the United States. Now, as we approach the 2026 World Cup, there are 3 First Division soccer leagues across the men's and women's game and multiple fully professional lower divisions, with more still on the way. 1994 gave the tailwind and energy to create those leagues, and Alejandro Bedoya is one of the many players to have played in them.
I think for 94 in U.S., there was no professional men's soccer league. And so from that World Cup, I think actually one of the prerequisites to hosting it was that America needed to have a major soccer league. And that's where Major League Soccer came into play.
You look around the league, you look around the stadiums, the fans, the tifos, the passion, the rivalries as well. I think all that are reasons to kind of be thankful for that 94 World Cup and what it's brought.
And it's become a league where players in their prime now from Europe, from South America, want to be part of this league, want to be part of the clubs, like you mentioned, the community feeling aspect of it, where people can connect with the local team and feel that pride. It's definitely there. The fan bases have grown. You see even these small market teams where perhaps people didn't really think that soccer would resonate. I mean, look at the clubs like Columbus and Cincinnati, Nashville. It's just been incredible. So I think a lot of this growth and a lot of the success of MLS and the American player to this day playing at big clubs, you could trace it back to the 94 World Cup.
When we talk about the establishment of MLS, and if you want to call it glory clubs, within MLS, like the Galaxy, and DC United, all these teams that really started out and push the game here. Then you talk about how it had an effect on a generation of people watching that went from just being, okay, the cursory fan to all of a sudden, I'm into it. I'm dedicated. I'm a diehard. And that generation, they pass it down to their kids now. So now we're having generational fans, within the game, which is so important. If you want to talk about this sport growing in this country, you have to have generational fans.
The 1994 World Cup did not just have a legacy for the game itself, but it had a lasting impact on the players who played in it, like Tony Meola.
Whether it's me, whether it's Alexi Lalas or Tab Ramos or Cobi Jones or whoever it is, Marcelo Balboa, the people remember, and they remember you when you make an impact somewhere in their life. Maybe you were the reason they started playing. Maybe that team was the reason. Maybe they hated the uniforms we wore, but they remember that team, which now, by the way, everyone's dying to have those uniforms, right? Which is really odd to me, right? That how things change. We must have been so far ahead of the trends.
Well, for someone that wasn't planning to play soccer past, high school, it's the entirety, of my life. I owe everything to this game, and obviously that was a big part of it, the World Cup, because that kind of sparked, after my performance there, the ability for me to go overseas and play, and then, to come back here to the LA Galaxy and play here for the remainder of my playing career.
If it wasn't for that 94 World Cup and the opportunities weren't here to play in this country past college, we might have been doing something else.
Players like myself that grew up, just playing and seeing what 94, the spectacle of the World Cup really is, that had a great impact on us. There's no doubt that the legacy of the 94 World Cup lives on.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody said, hey, 1994 was when I got turned on to the sport, I'd be a rich man. People remember. That's amazing to me.
There have been many high points for the U.S. men's national team since hosting the 1994 World Cup. It hasn't been perfect, but there have been some incredible runs in some big FIFA tournaments. In 2002, the team went to the quarterfinals, their furthest run in a FIFA World Cup finals, and Tony Meola and Cobi Jones were a part of that group.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
I guess the most frustrating thing about 2002, and I was a bench player in that team, happy to be back in the World Cup mix after missing out on a World Cup. I can tell you one thing, that group not only were they good, it was a good group, obviously. They all wanted to erase 1998. Like, that was kind of mission number one. And whatever that meant that was going to happen, it was like the national team can't be remembered for failing like we did in 1998.
I thought that this was a good group, that it was well-rounded, that we had every kind of, I guess, age group represented. You had the young players coming in, you had the mid-range, you had the veterans, and in so doing, I guess when I say it, and the fact that we never really thought, okay, anyone was so special and out of the ordinary, maybe that was the specialness about it, that it was a group that was just all together, willing to work with one another. We had played, tournaments together beforehand and fought and had some good wins and some good victories and established ourselves internationally as like this unit is very good. And then for it to come to the 2002 World Cup where we still all felt, yeah, let's just go out there, get it done, and make things happen. Maybe that was the specialness of it. I give a lot of credit to Bruce Arena, in that one. He was very good at making sure that everybody felt part of the team. And that's a very difficult thing to do when you're at the World Cup because, you can be player 17, 18, and you could feel that you're kind of out of it. You're not going to see the field, all those type of stuff. And I always give Bruce credit for this. Bruce was a coach that always had like player, and I always think of teams of being 18. Sorry, I'm old school instead of the 22 or whatever it is now. But you'd always have like the 17th or 18th player cheering for the guy that was playing in his spot on the field ahead of him. Now, if you can get that, where you have that tightness in a group, you'll find success.
I think it was split pretty much down the middle between guys who played in MLS and guys who were playing in Europe at the time. I think there was like one player difference, if I'm not mistaken. Bruce Arena was in his prime, pushing all the right buttons, and that team played well at the right time, right? It was a month of sort of magic, and you're right. Had we been living in this day and age with VAR, that game may have been a little bit different. Of course, it would have been an equalizing penalty kick and all of that stuff, an equalizing opportunity at a penalty kick. Sometimes in those tournaments, you just have a bad month or bad 3 games and you get knocked out, and that's just the way it is. But I think we all took a lot of pride in the national team program and getting it to a spot where we thought it should be. And they proved that they can play with anybody in the world, that group. You go to Germany, who made it to a final and ends up losing. And, I mean, we were every bit as good, if not better, than Germany on the day. If the soccer gods were fair all the time, we win the game, right? We were all over them. And it just didn't happen. The frustrating part is I think we all thought that high water mark was sort of the standard. That doesn't mean that you can't get knocked out of a World Cup or you lose in the first round, but always the thought that that's at a minimum where we can go.
That 2002 run to the quarterfinals, the furthest mark the U.S. men's national team has ever gone in the World Cup finals. But it is not the furthest they have gone in a senior FIFA tournament. In 2009, they made it to the Confederations Cup final in South Africa, facing off against Brazil. On the road there, they knocked off the Spanish national team, who were in the midst of the greatest run in national team history, winning 3 consecutive tournaments and being 35 matches unbeaten heading into that game. The U.S. clinched their spot in that Confederations Cup thanks to our own Benny Feilhaber's incredible winner against Mexico in the 2007 Gold Cup final.
Volley! Yes! Yes! Benny Feilhaber! 73rd minute! Benny with his Jets! 2-1 USA!
Unbelievable strike! Unbelievable world class.
And of course, it was so important that we made it from the Gold Cup in 2007 to 2009. That was prefaced as a dry run for the World Cup. We got to play against Italy, Brazil, Egypt, Spain, Brazil. So we were playing with house money at that point, getting against Spain, the best team in the world at that point. I think it was 35 games they hadn't lost. And we felt confident. Let's go. We know what Spain does. You know, they're going to keep the ball. Bob set us up for tremendous success in being gritty in terms of how we wanted to defend, but we had the confidence to try and play through these guys, and we also had the confidence to defend and defend as a group. And I mean, winning that game was, to me, it's still the biggest win in U.S. men's soccer history in modern era, right? You go back to, the shot heard around the world and some of those games a little further back. I don't want to, take anything away from, how we got there, because those are steps that got us to this point and whatnot. But man, that Spain game, playing against the best team I think I've ever played against and beating them and outplaying them, right? I thought we outplayed them. We deserved it. It wasn't luck. It was massive. And we go into the final as well with tons of confidence against Brazil. And I think you saw that. We just, we take the 2-0 lead and maybe a couple bounces don't go our way. We lose a little bit of confidence there at the end when they tie it. And, Brazil's the best team in the world for a reason. So put us in a really good spot going into the 2010 World Cup. A lot of good performances as well. I think the first game against England, probably our worst game of the tournament, but it got us going in the right direction. And then, dude, the Slovenia game was crazy as well, because you lose that game, you're down 2-0 at half, you lose that game, you're out. The thing that I remember about that game is obviously we came out firing on all cylinders in the second half. We get the one goal within a couple minutes with Landon, get the second goal kind of late with Michael, and then got the third goal with Mo that they chalked off. We come back into the locker room at the end of the game and it's 2-2. And I remember Clint coming in and he was pissed. He was like throwing stuff and kicking stuff. And I'm like, Clint, we're still in the World Cup, dude. We were, 5 minutes away from being out. We're in. We were down 2-0. Everybody would have signed up for this 2-2. And we got, all we got to do is beat Algeria and we're in. And I think after the emotional part of it right away, I think everybody had that mindset. And I mean, you saw the roof come off on the Landon goal in Algeria.
Howard, distribution, brilliant. Landon Donovan, there are things on here for the USA. Can they do it here? Cross, and Dempsey is denied again, and Donovan has scored! Oh, can you believe this? Go, USA! Oh, it's incredible! You could not write a script like this!
And I remember going on Facebook, I think it was Facebook, and I had, the little notifications. It was like 100, 150 new friends, messages, whatever. I'm like, Johnny, what the hell's going on here, dude? Like, and then when you start looking and people are texting or writing stuff about the goal and the game and the win and whatever, then you got the link of the montage of all the celebrations across the country. And you're like, I mean, you get emotional. I get emotional just thinking about now where, what is going on, dude? Like, look at what we're doing. Like, this is insane. And, yeah, I mean, me and Johnny, just me and him in there in the room, like looking at it and thinking, dude, what's happening right now? What are we a part of right now? And so, yeah, it's a memory. I can remember it exactly what the room looked like. Us looking on the computer, us talking about it. It was a incredible moment to realize, how much it meant to so many people back home.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
After Zoomies at the dog park, it's time for Drive Up at Target. In goes a big bag of kibble and one squeaky chicken toy for the good boy. Drive Up that's ready when you are, only in the Target app. Just tap Target.
Playing in a World Cup for a soccer player is a pinnacle of any professional soccer player's career. And like you mentioned, playing it in Brazil adds to that. Brazil has won the most World Cups out of any country. They're known as stylistically to play, the most beautiful type of soccer. But as I recall that, it's just first and foremost, it's just I take great pride in having represented my country, right? You're representing America, United States, and on the world stage, international stage. So I think in terms of connecting with fans through social media was a great way to see the people back at home, all the host parties that even friends and family were hosting at their places, and or going out to bars. I guess the biggest regret, I wish we had that opportunity to beat that golden generation of Belgium's team, because I believe the next game would have been against Argentina on the 4th of July, which talk about, a humongous celebration that could have occurred, right on for United States, watching us and how that would have been. But I think you saw the different watch parties, the fan festivals that were being held, I guess, across, all cities in America. Just seeing that just brought a tremendous sense of pride, but also it kind of motivated. I mean, that's what gives you that extra, we would watch videos that they would put videos for us to see how, fans were celebrating back home. And it just gives you a little extra push, a little extra motivation to go out there and really rep your country and your hometown and do it for that back. So it's just an incredible experience. It really is. And I just recall being, we got stuck in what could be considered the group of death, right? We had the first game against Ghana and in Portugal and in Germany to get out of the group stage. And we managed to get that first win, which was crucial against Ghana. Had a good result against Portugal, although we were very, very disappointed that we let them tie it up in the last, minutes of the game. But we managed to get out of the group. And I think that's the most important thing in the World Cup, to get out of the group, and then anything can happen in knockout games. Tim Howard stood on his head against Belgium. But just being in World Cup was just an amazing experience. I think our base camp was in Sao Paulo, which is one of the biggest cities in Brazil. And man, the streets just being flooded with music and the dancing and the passion that fans from all over the world descended upon Sao Paulo showed was incredible. I think it was tough to get some sleep sometimes at night, just because, the party seemed like it never ended. But I think for my family and friends that traveled there that got to experience that, it's really just amazing. I can't even describe it. I can talk about, compare it to however many Super Bowls in America, but I think people will really see in 2026, and obviously, Americans know how to throw a big party.
I was able one time to live the World Cup as a fan, basically, when I called it in 2018, and I was in Russia, and in my moments where I wasn't calling a game and working, I was enjoying it as a fan on my off days, and it's just the coolest. Like, as a player, you never know that stuff is going on. Never. I mean, you see it on TV, and maybe your friends tell you a little bit about it, but until it's like anything else, until you live it yourself, you don't understand the magnitude of it. And I loved every minute of it. And the U.S. wasn't even in it. I didn't even get to celebrate with U.S. fans. I met Tab Ramos over there, who was also working at the time, my good buddy, and we kind of sat in a square one day, and it was just like we were blown away. Like, this is what happens outside the stadium. Like, this is so cool. But my hope in 2022 was that we would continue to build. We would show promise. We would show that this second youngest team in the World Cup can compete and continue to grow. I left that World Cup feeling really, really good, me personally. In my opinion, we got where we should be, because I still think at that time, as the second youngest team in the World Cup, if we play the Netherlands 10 times, maybe we win once, maybe we draw once or twice, but they beat us 6 or 7 times, right? So they were the better team on the day. I had been with the youth national teams under Tab Ramos and his group for 5.5 years as an assistant coach. I watched every one of those players basically come through the national team system, play in youth World Cups, play in tournaments around the world, saw them grow up from most of them, like since they were 14 years old. And I always said 2026 is when this group of players will be ready. I said it the day that we got knocked out of the World Cup in 2018, because I was still with the youth national team at that point. And everyone was worried about the future. What are we going to do? Who are the next players? No one knew. We knew Christian Pulisic, obviously, but no one knew the Weston McKennies and the Timothy Weahs and Serginho Dest if you weren't with the youth national team programs or weren't following them. And we all said, no. There's a group of players that can play. Right, and they have to continue to grow, and by 2026, they're going to be in their prime, all of them, and that's when we need to be great. I'm not quite sure we knew at that point. I can't remember that we had the World Cup in the U.S. in 2018. I don't remember when it was. So the idea that they now are playing at home in a moment where they will likely all be in their prime is, for me, pretty promising, even given the current circumstances right now.
This Pride Month, the U.S. Soccer Federation is proud to support You Can Play, a group dedicated to making sports a safe and welcoming space for everyone, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. When you shop our Pride collection at store.ussoccer.com, a portion of the proceeds goes directly to You Can Play to support their mission. Shop now and show your pride.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
Well, we heard about the 1994 World Cup and what it was like here in the U.S., but this World Cup is going to be different. It is the biggest when it comes to the amount of teams that will participate, and it is the first ever to be hosted across 3 nations, kicking off in Mexico, Canada, and here in the United States of America. Let's talk to our veterans a little bit about what they expect this experience to be off the field, starting with Alejandro Bedoya.
Just like 94 World Cup had a lasting legacy in terms of the establishment of MLS and these other leagues and the growth of our sports, of soccer, this is going to take it to another level, I think. People are really going to see soccer for what it is, the passion. There's 48 teams, all the different countries that are come here, the cultures that are going to send here, just the sense of community, really. And I can't wait to see these other countries that maybe wouldn't have got the chance to if it wasn't for this expanded format to showcase what they're all about too. I mean, there's a sense of pride and passion that goes into every country, and when you bring that two together, fans will really get to see what maybe, for those who maybe don't travel outside the States, to see what it's like in those countries.
For me, for like 94, when it was here, that was 24 teams. That was 24 teams. We are going to have 48 teams, in this World Cup. I mean, imagine that. So what we thought was a fantastic global event being put on in the U.S. that was major, that's going to be just half, of what it's going to be in 2026, where it's going to be in the U.S. It's also going to be in Mexico. It's going to be in Canada. So it's practically impossible to say what it's going to look like and how it's going to impact soccer, and now I can't even say in the U.S. I got to say in the North American region, that's what it's going to encompass, all these different countries, and it's going to affect so many people.
And dude, I just don't think anybody has a clue as to what is truly going to transpire here. When I look back and think of, what World Cups have looked like in different places, I see people walking everywhere, like just waves of people downtown Kansas City, around the stadium at Arrowhead. Even like the population is going to grow in places like Overland Park, surrounding suburbs of Kansas City. And this is like a smaller market. These bigger markets, bigger cities, it's just going to be flooded with people from all over the world coming to watch these games. And I'm telling you, there's going to be people that aren't aware. Most people are going to be aware, okay, we have the World Cup and there's going to be, an influx of people. There's going to be like, what are all these people? Is there a carnival going on? What's happening? Like, where do these people come from? Who are they, right? Why are they dressed up funny? And I think it's going to be amazing. I really think that, the American people are going to absorb it and feel part of it and want to get to know more about it. I think there's a much larger population now in the U.S. that are knowledgeable about the sport than they were in 94. And so I think we're going to have the pride as a country and as a people to showcase what soccer means to us. I know that Kansas City is like that for sure. I think that's one of the reasons why we probably got the games in Kansas City. We have the ability to show what we love about the sport and who we are and what kind of fans we are. It's going to be amazing, man. I am more than excited about what the World Cup's going to look like in a year from now.
I cannot wait as a fan now on the other side, I guess, to experience all the party and aspect of it, the host parties, the fan fest, from the other side in terms of spending time with different fans and the passion that all these fans from all over the world are going to bring here. Being based here in Philly, we're hosting a lot of games here in the city as well. I really just can't wait to bring even new people, to welcome new people into our sport.
Look, MLS and soccer in America is already, on such a upward trend. I think this is just an extra boost, right? That's going to put soccer in this country maybe on a level playing field with some of the other major sports in this country. I don't ever see soccer, supplanting like the American football mentality here. And I just think people, that's the culture. But I could see them getting to a level playing field with some of these other sports, basketball, baseball, hockey, and whatnot. And it's such obviously I'm biased, but it's such a beautiful sport to watch. And it's not because, there's a goal here or a goal there. It's because of the way it's played. It's a free-flowing sport. It's a player sport rather than a coach's sport. It's something that it's fluid. It's not, robotic in any way. So it's an amazing sport. And I do think that there's going to be a really big percentage increase in people that start looking at the sport in a way that I do, or that you do, or that most big soccer fans do. So I'm excited about what it's going to look like.
I mean, you're going to have a tailwind behind you just as far as fan support and everybody wishing you luck, and hopefully they can feed into that. I want to see them, come together as a group, as a unit, and understand that they have all the talent in the world, but don't forget that they also have the strength and the work ethic of what, they always say about the American player. They're going to work hard and stuff like that. Bring that in as well. And if you can combine those two things at the right time, you're going to find a way to have a success. You got the whole country, cheering you on. Now it's difficult. It's not easy. It's pressure. As I said, that 94, we had the pressure. We did not want to be the first team, the host nation, to not make it through. I mean, there's going to be pressure on this group. There's expectations now. So many of the players are playing at a high level. You're going to expect more from them. And I think that's fair.
I just think back to what it meant to me when I was on that roster in 2010 in South Africa. And I could tell you, I felt that from all my teammates, what that meant to us and what it meant to doing something special for our country, right? That's going to be times 10, if not times 100 when you're playing at home. I mean, it's going to be insane. And whatever 26-man roster goes into it, and whatever the results 12 months leading up to the World Cup, I think those are going to be almost irrelevant at that point. Sure, you got to hope that there's some confidence and some chemistry and cohesion within the players, but the motivation, the feeling that's going to come from the player pool and stepping on that field in game one of the World Cup and being in the starting 11, being the first sub off the bench to make an impact. Dude, I just think all those things are going to play such a big factor for our country that I just don't see any other way but them being successful, right?
I have high expectations for them. They're playing here in American soil. What a fantastic opportunity to play in front of a lot of your home fans in your own country, be comfortable playing, with that aspect and make history. They have an opportunity to take this national team to maybe where they haven't been before in a World Cup. This is, a lot of folks say that this is the golden generation, the most talented group that's ever been put together. And sure, that could be true on paper, right? But I hope that they give us something to be proud of. Like I mentioned before, I always took great pride in going out there. And, for a lot of these players, they are at bigger clubs. They are at the big teams in the big leagues. It's not always about your technical ability. It's not always about, how good step overs or what club you play for. It's about that pride and going out there. And I think that's why a lot of fans have been a bit let down with their recent performances, because they've lost out to teams that they should be beating, especially in our region, teams like Canada and Panama. Obviously the gap has perhaps closed. MLS has been a big reason for that, which is a good thing in terms of development of players. But at the same time, the American player has to continue to rely on that American mentality, the pride that has made us, that be able to compete on the world stage. So we can't lose sight of that. So one thing I will say is a national team is not always the best and the most technical players put together. It's a collection of players that are going to really work best for whoever is the coach at that time and the style of play that he wants to play. So I think Pochettino has his work cut out to put even his stamp on the team. in terms of how he wants them to play, his philosophy, the principles, because, on the world, in any game for that matter, you can have the best technical players, but if they're not committed for each other and for the country, well, it's going to show up in the results.
I hope they realize the moment of playing in a World Cup on home soil, because you can change your own life, but most of those guys right now are pretty settled in their life, right? Playing at the highest level. Hopefully they're going to change someone else's life. I'm going to go under the assumption that they all get it. If they don't get it, somebody's going to tell them between now and then, and they will grasp the moment and make a massive, massive impact in the game.
Do I see us winning the World Cup? No, I don't think we have the team yet to truly, go on a massive run. But I think we're going to play well. I think we're going to, have, one or two big results that maybe people don't see going our way that do. I see us beating a big powerhouse at some point, hopefully in the playoff, and making a deep run. And it'll be really fun to cheer this team on in a year from now.
Things happen in moments, right? And you got to get a little bit lucky. You have to be good for sure. You got to get a little bit lucky. You got to get a break here and there, and you got to seize the moment, right? I just hope all of that stuff happens for us. That doesn't mean we're going to win the World Cup. I want to come out there thinking, man, our team is good. We got good players. We got good kids coming up behind these players. There's a future for the national team, and we can compete with anybody in the world because we've already been there before. We've been at a point, even though we haven't won a World Cup, we've been to a point where we can get on the field and compete with anybody. And I just want to get back to that.
Legendary stuff from 4 players who have been there and who have created some of the biggest moments in the U.S. men's national team history. So a big thank you for taking the time to talk to us, to Cobi Jones, Tony Meola, Benny Feilhaber, and Alejandro Bedoya. The way they talked about 1994, the legacy it created, these huge moments we have had since then. There is so much to look forward to next year, and I have chills thinking about the 2026 World Cup. We have so much more coming up for you as well at the US Soccer Podcast. We already have some really big episodes in the plans. We're going to be talking with USMNT manager Mauricio Pochettino going into the Gold Cup next week. We have already recorded on the ground an incredible episode from the US women's national team's previous camp with their captain Lindsay Heaps, former captain and legend Becky Sauerbrunn, and of course our own Megan Klingenberg. So you can follow ussoccer.com or US Soccer anywhere on social media to keep up with the national teams as well as this show.